Where's the music? Sorry. We are go. We're gonna ask Teresa to do that. There we go.
Okay, I hereby call this, revised special virtual meeting of the Board of Aldermen and the Charter Revision Commission to order. Would you kindly stand and join us in the pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll do a roll call. Alderman John Anglais present. Alderman Eric McPherson. Present. Alderman Christabel Macy. She's absent because she had a work meeting that she could not get out of, so she's in the work. Alderman David Gidwani.
On the phone.
On the phone. Alderman Stanley Kude. Here. Alderman Noreen McGordy.
Here.
Alderman Anthony Simonetti.
Present.
Alderman Bernie Simons.
Present.
So we have 7 aldermen present, one not present. Roll call for Charter Revision. Andy Vasella.
Present.
Via phone. Gary DeFucco.
Here.
Present in person. Ruth Ann Dunford. Right. Ruth Parkins.
Ruth's no longer on the commission.
David Prizzuto.
Present.
Present in person. Darissa Ritter.
Here.
Present in person. Donald Sheehy.
On the phone.
Phone, okay, thank you.
We recognize that Fran Trudosio is here also.
Corporation Counsel, Fran Trudosio, are you on the line?
I'm on the phone.
Okay, so the first order of business is presentation and discussion on the proposed amendments to the City of Shelton Charter as drafted by the Charter Revision Commission. My understanding is that we have been provided with a summary of the process. Chairman of the Charter Revision Commission, so to speak, Dan DiVasella or Gary was.
Thank you, Mr. President. And what I propose we do is we walk through the summary. If there's questions around specific language, we can certainly go into it. But much more what I wanted to present to the aldermen was not only how we went about the changes that you see here today, but there are 20 substantive changes to the charter, some more substantive than others, but would like to walk you through those so you kind of know what's in the document. And of course, can address any questions around the specific language which Fran Teodosio helped us craft. But wanted to really make sure you guys knew the ideas that are behind this. So what I propose, and some of us are virtual, is I will present kind of the process and then each idea. And then, Mr. President, if it's okay, I'll stop after each one and see if there's any question or discussion about it. Does that sound like a good process?
It's going, in my view, it's going to be a little bit disjointed, perhaps, because my summary of review of the charter was more than just a summary. It was, my review was a review of the red line version of the charter, and I have a number of comments to make throughout, some of which are simply dotting the i's and crossing the t's, and some are more substantial. But I'll try not to miss any. I'll try to follow you along. So we'll follow your format. But if the aldermen want to jump in at any point, then feel free to do so. Just let me know, and we can bring our issues to your attention. Is that okay?
Absolutely. And if you want to jump over to the red line at any point, let me know. We can jump back and forth.
Very good. Okay, well, why don't you proceed?
Great. Thank you, Mr. President. So we have, on the first page of the summary, it's just a summary of the process that we use. And before I go into the process, I just need to publicly thank the members of the commission again. They have been working over the course of the past 5 months in, I like to say that it's how government should work, is in a very nonpartisan way, having great discussions and debates about different ideas that you're going to see here. And I've just been very proud to be a member of this commission, very proud to work as a team with these folks. And I think you'll see the results of it bear that out. So with that, the process that we adopted early on was a 3-phase process, where we started off just explicitly collecting ideas. And we wanted to cast our net as wide as possible to get as many good ideas as we could. So we actually collected over 50 substantive ideas from a number of different sources. First, we did an analysis of all of the towns in Fairfield County and the Valley, and that is in a PowerPoint presentation that I won't go through because it's super detailed, but you can read through it to see how other towns do different things. The short answer is lots of different ways. There's no 2 towns that do it the same way, but in looking at the 30 towns we analyzed, you begin to see some patterns. And so we'll talk about that as we go through the ideas. We've had 3 different public hearings where people have come in and given us ideas. We created a dedicated email account that was publicized in the Huntington Herald for several weeks to try to collect ideas, and we got several through that. And then, of course, ideas from the commissioners themselves. Each commissioner has had good ideas and has contributed to what you see here today. Once that was done, we actually spent the bulk of our time debating the ideas. So rather than getting into the language of the charter in this second phase, we simply debated the ideas on their merits. And out of those 50 ideas, we came to agree on 20 of them. And in the course of that, the ideas evolved, they became better. There was a lot of back and forth that helped us get to what you're going to see today. And then the final phase, which was kind of in the last month, was actually writing the charter. And this is where we went through several drafts of it. We had great proofreading by Darlissa and Ruth Ann, who really made sure everything ticked and tied. And then Fran, from a legal perspective, made sure that everything we were doing fit in with state statutes and that our language wasn't having any unintended consequences. So making sure that our language was crisp and said what we meant it to say. And so that is how we came here to you guys today. Just want to see, before we got into the substance of it, if there was any questions on the process.
No questions.
Okay. Well, then let's turn to the next page and let's get into the substance of this. So I have grouped the changes that we made into a couple different themes. The first of which is we made some structural changes to how the city is governed. And we did this based on a couple of principles that emerged through the context of our discussions and debate. The first is voter control. Many of the changes you're going to see are under the spirit of give more power to the voters. We actually, as a commission, firmly believed that, representative democracy is our best form of government. I'm sure everyone would agree with that. But in that, we want to limit the powers of the Republican or Democratic town committees to say who gets to make decisions in town and increase voter choice for elected boards and commissions. So you're going to see that theme throughout. At the same time, and a lot of this is just coming out of democratic theory, is checks and balances. We wanted to make sure that different decisions had checks and balances and that different bodies of government were able to check each other. so that people had to agree that any branch of government couldn't do things unilaterally. And the last thing was to standardize. So in several areas of the charter, there were things that weren't standard, things like term limits like term lengths that were different, that we just sought to standardize because we saw no logic to having them be different. So with that, let me talk about the first one, which is probably the one that's gotten the most attention, which is our first change was we eliminated the Board of A&T and transferred their line item power over to the Finance Committee of the Board of Aldermen. The real rationale behind this is, and I say this as someone who got their start in their public service as the chair of A&T, right? So this has some emotion for me, is basically we said, look, the Board of A&T as it stands right now basically is nomination by the town committee is tantamount to election. There is no real election or choice there. So we were faced with a decision. We said either we're going to eliminate the Board of A&T or we're going to turn it into a full-fledged finance board, which some smaller towns do. And as we analyzed other towns, we found that those powerful boards of finance, some of whom are the fiscal authority for the city, which of course right now is the Board of Aldermen, they tend to be in smaller towns. With mid-sized and larger cities like Danbury, like Stratford, like Bridgeport, really not having a Board of Finance. They rely on their elected legislature to provide those functions. And so we felt that the Board of Aldermen as the fiscal authority is the proper check and balance in the budget process, where the voters, if they don't like what you as aldermen can do, they can vote you out. And they can vote you out every 2 years. There is no recourse to getting rid of a Board of A&T member. They are appointed by their party, and as long as their party likes them, they can stay there. So we felt that, eliminating the Board of A&T and moving those powers to a fully elected and democratic body was the right move. Let me pause there for questions or discussion.
Go ahead. Anybody got? Let me just comment with respect to the history, the historical evolution of the Board of Apportionment Taxation. Back in 1997, and was appointed by then Mayor Vincent Tizzity to the Board of Apportionment Taxation. And at that time, 1967, the late 60s, the Board of Apportionment Taxation was the fiscal authority of the city. And the Board of Aldermen was the legislative authority. There was constant bickering. The Board of Aldermen wanted to pass the legislation and do things, but the Board of Apportionment Taxation, an unelected body, would not give the money to do it. So it was the early 70s that they changed the charter, and they vested the fiscal authority and the legislative authority in the Board of Aldermen. And that has worked from the early 70s until now very well, and it's surprisingly been worked when we had all Democrat Board of Aldermen, all Republican Board of Aldermen, 50% Democrat, 50% Republican. No matter what the makeup of the board, it worked fine. And I just think that we're to the point now where over the years, they made that change, and they left just threads for the Board of Apportionment Taxation with no substantial duties. And I think it's time to make the final changes you recommended, and just say, look, it's appointment by town committees is tantamount to election, and there's no vote of oversight, and the functions can be absorbed with little difficulty by the fiscal authority and the legislative authority of the city. So I think that's the right way to go. Any other observations? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I got one comment or question. Dan and team, can you share briefly what some of the opposition was to this and how you guys worked through it to arrive at this?
Yeah, I think some of the opposition to it came from folks in the public hearing. Michelle Laubin, who's a current member of the Board of A&T, spoke very forcibly against this, basically saying that we are, and I'll paraphrase her, I'm sure she'll come to the public hearing so you can hear straight from her, but she basically said, look, you guys are removing a check and balance on the mayor. We obviously went through this budget process that was a little controversial with the A&T, and this is a response to that. To which we said, no, it's actually not. This is actually us thinking about, we either are going to make the Board of A&T more powerful or we're going to eliminate it. Keeping it in its current form is not a check and balance, right? A&T, as it has evolved, has in each charter revision been stripped of more and more power, as John kind of said, the history of this. So we said, look, if we're going to have a Board of Finance, either we're going to have a full-fledged Board of Finance or we're going to give that power to an already elected body, that being the fiscal authority, the aldermen. So we said, look, if there is going to be a check and balance on the mayor, it should be from the Board of Aldermen. Why? Because the Board of Aldermen being chosen by the voters every 2 years is the most responsive to the voters, right? So if the voters of the 4th Ward think you and Alderman Simons are doing a bad job, they don't like how you handle the budget, or, by the way, any other issue, they can vote against you in the next election. That is not true of the Board of A&T, right? The Board of A&T, if we on the Republican Town Committee say Dan DiBasella is going to be on the Board of A&T, the voters have no recourse. So that was our logic in saying that, we are going to eliminate this board and move the remaining powers over to the aldermen.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That makes a lot of sense. And I do support you guys with this theme of give more power to the voters. And this is certainly another example of that.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, Dan, this is David Gidwani. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I just got a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Of course.
When I was getting ready, this is before I got elected to any position in Shelton, I was always helping the RTC, Ben Gordy, Jason Perillo, and whoever was up for elections, doing the mailers, putting stamps on them, putting, address stickers on the envelopes. And I very well remember that Mayor Loretti himself coming to me and telling me that it's nice that you're getting involved in your community, and the best for you to do when you're starting off your career in public services to be on A&T. And the reason why you be on A&T is because you learn how the city works. And I have always had that at the back of my mind, that the mayor's words were, David, you should start with A&T. But I did not start with A&T because there was an alderman position available, which I ran for, and I lost the first time to Jack Finn. But now we're going back and saying what you guys are saying, we're going to take away A&T. When the mayor was so strong, saying that this is where you want to start because this is where you learn about the city. This is what keeps the city going, the A&T. And now you guys are looking to eliminate that. I'm not happy with that. Line of getting rid of A&T and giving the alderman and the mayor all the power. Someone's got to check the balances. The A&T is another layer over an onion. You're taking the layers out. The onion's going to get cooked faster without those layers. I would rather have those layers, have the A&T there to monitor what's going on in the city. These are people who are working for free. No one is getting paid. They're willing to sacrifice their time to do better for the city and make the city a wonderful place for a lot of people to come reside and move the city forward. So I am not happy with the commission saying let's get rid of A&T, and I just wanted to make a note of that.
Well, good. No, thank you. But I think just to respond to it, I think you make a point that I agree with, and we actually debated, and a point I disagree with. I think the point I agree with is what you said is the thing we're losing by eliminating A&T is a great place for people to start. I think you were right. The mayor's right. I've often said that. And it is a benefit of A&T. I actually think that as we debated it, that was one of the strongest reasons to keep an A&T is it's a great entry point into local government. I did it. I know Jason Perillo did it, right? You were offered that opportunity, right? Like, so I think that is a strong argument for keeping it. I think the wrong argument for keeping it is checks and balances, right? Because there really isn't a check right now, right? There is nothing that the Board of A&T can do to stop you as the Board of Aldermen from passing whatever budget you want. And, you know, the Board of A&T has never been meant to be a check or balance. It's meant to be a place where you can reflect deeply on the budget, right? You guys as aldermen have a lot of different things that you're dealing with. And so the theory of A&T was always like, hey, here's a committee that can really, really get deep into it. Well, there's no reason why the Finance Committee of the Board of Aldermen can't serve the same function, and they're democratically elected. So I disagree that A&T is an effective check and balance right now. I don't think anyone will lose their voice in the budget process. And if anything, the voters gain more say as to how the budget's actually going to be formed.
I thank you for your response, but I stand strong where I'm against getting rid of
Completely
A&T.
understand and appreciate that.
Thank you, Dan.
Of course.
May I comment? I would ask specifically what powers are being transferred from A&T to the Board of Aldermen. The only power that they have as being transferred is the ability to make interdepartmental transfers during the course of the year, line item transfers. And
that is correct, John.
That is not significant, and that can be easily managed by the Board of Aldermen's Finance Committee as the Charter Revision Commission has recommended. Also, the recommendations that take place during the course of the budget deliberations that come from A&T can still be made at the budget public hearing, and they can get them in that way. Because all the information, all the budget information is totally available to the public, and get a chance to see it and ask questions. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Dan. Next point.
All right. If there's nothing else on A&T, second big item was we've expanded planning and zoning from 6 to 7 members. So the logic of this was currently on P&Z, it requires 4 of 6 votes to pass anything, which is a 67% standard, which is higher than the standard for a filibuster in the United States Senate. It is just a very, very high standard to get agreement on P&Z. And you will see throughout this is we just like, in general, odd-numbered commissions. That way it avoids ties. So with that logic, and to Alderman Goodwani's earlier point, to increase, since we're eliminating A&T, to increase opportunities for more people to get involved with different boards and commissions, all of that logic led us to say, hey, let's increase P&Z from 6 to 7. Just as a note, as I go through, I'll tell you some of the ideas we debated, but didn't take action on. So one idea was to eliminate the alternates, right? And we went back and forth on this about whether to eliminate P&Z alternates. And quite honestly, if you go back and look at different points, we had eliminated them. We had 1 alternate instead of 2. We had 2 alternates, but they can only substitute for members of their own party. Ultimately, we left it alone, right? After a lot of debate and a lot of input, we said, hey, this system's working now. It gives the flexibility so that if people have conflicts of interest, there's a substitute that comes in. So we didn't change anything with the P&Z alternates.
Okay. Any comments?
Mr. President, Dan, it's Anthony Simonetti. Thank you for the job you and your committee have done. My question is, did you go to these commissions and these boards and talk to them about these things before you made these recommendations at all?
They actually, so we did. Sometimes they came to us. Sometimes we went to them. So for P&Z, Chairman Harger actually came to 2 of the 3 public hearings to give her input on the charter. And for the Board of Education, we actually had 2 members come in, one Republican, Jimmy Orzetti, and one Democrat, Kate Kutash, to give their input. And then I believe, I try to think that anybody else from the boards came to the public hearings. Obviously, Michelle Albin from A&T came and spoke at 2 of our public hearings. So we have engaged members of the various boards as we've made these changes.
Thank you, Dan.
Of course, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Dan, proceed.
Okay. The third big change has to do with minority representation on elected and appointed boards. This was one where we started to look at other towns and how other towns do things. And as we've said before, there's no 2 towns that are alike. They're all different in terms of term limits, number of people on the board, minority representation. But one pattern that we began to see is about half of the towns analyzed referred to a particular state statute, which actually outlines what minority representation, what the minimum minority representation needs to be in each town. And we decided we wanted to switch to that model for all of our boards and commissions for a couple of reasons. The first reason goes back to democratic theory. Is yes, as much as possible, the person with the most votes should win. But you do want to balance that with having, look, we're local government. We want to be as nonpartisan as politics could be. We do want to have minority representation out there. So we actually looked at towns like Milford's Board of Education has no minority representation. You're basically allowed to, if you elect your Board of Ed by district, there is no need to have minority representation. We felt that was too far. We felt that, we want to have these commissions have representatives from the minority party, whoever that may be at the time. And so we went with the state statutes, which for elected and appointed boards, and you'll see in the charter itself, lays out by the size of the committee how many seats need to be reserved for the minority party. Practically, for our 2 major elected boards and commissions, the Board of Ed would now have a minimum of 3 people from the minority party, and the Board of Planning and Zoning would have a minimum of 2. So whichever party is in the minority at the time is still guaranteed that number of seats.
Comments?
Dan, it's not a minimum. I mean, people could get elected, and I guess the minimum would be in the Board of Ed.
State your name before you speak.
This is Gary DeFlippo. This is Gary DeFlippo speaking. It's a minimum requirement. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way the board made up after an election.
That is correct.
It's the Board of Education. It's a 6-3 maximum to one party, and 3 would be a minimum to the other party, but it could go 5-4. The same thing with planning and zoning.
That's
it
correct.
would not be, I feel it could be a 4-3 split, depending on how the voters vote.
That is correct. And the other thing, Gary, you're absolutely right. And the other thing here that is increasing voter choice is the parties will now be incented to nominate 6 people because they can win 6. So for things like the Board of Ed, this past year notwithstanding, most of the time we have 10 people running for 9 slots. Well, now you're going to have 12 people running for 9 slots. So it's actually increasing voter choice in terms of the candidates that they can vote for. Any other questions on that one?
All right, go to the.
All right. If not, the next big idea, number 4 on the next page.
Well, sorry,
was
Dan.
Dan. Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that. I was on
That's
mute.
okay.
So just a quick question. So the state statute minimums, maximums, can you tell me what they are?
Yeah, so in fact, you can look at, like, if you flip over to the charter, and the
Yeah, I
stripes
have it
here,
up.
I'll show them.
Yep.
You have it up? Yep. So if
Yep.
you go down to page, let me see, I believe it's section 4. Let me go back up. Forgive me, I'm scrolling.
Section 5.
Section 5, thank you, Fran.
Okay, I'm there.
The
I see
very
the
beginning.
chart.
Yep.
Yep.
Very
I see
beginning
it.
of section 5. So it basically says, because we have sizes, different commissions are different sizes, right? Because this pertains not just to elected boards, but appointed boards as well. And so you can see here, for the Board of Education, that's 9. The maximum from one party is 6. For planning and zoning, which is 7, maximum is 5.
And you said this applies for appointed commissions as well, right?
That is correct.
Great. Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Of course. Any other questions on that? All right. If not, number 4, back on the idea list, was on the library board. We basically, as much as we love the library board, we thought they should have a shorter term than U.S. senators. And so we reduced it from 6 to 4, which you'll see there is some standardization on our appointed boards as well around the 4-year term. So we also increased the number of library board members from 6 to 7. Same philosophy of saying, hey, we want an odd number there. Let's increase participation as we eliminate the Board of A&T. So we increased them from 6 to 7 and shrank their terms. Any questions on that one? All right. Number 5. So this was a big change, and this was one that we were trying to look for a logic to it, and nobody had one. It's basically the charter as it is today. There's a number of appointed boards and commissions that the mayor can appoint on his own. And there's a number of boards and commissions that the Board of Aldermen can appoint on their own. And as we looked at that, and we said, that doesn't seem like there's a check and balance there. The way that the federal government does it, or the state government does it, or most other municipalities does it, is the executive nominates and the legislature approves. So nobody can make an appointment without at least some other governmental body saying, yes, we agree with that. So you'll see now the change we've made is for all appointments in this Section 5 of the Charter, which encompasses all of the non-public safety boards and commissions in town. We basically say the mayor will nominate, but the aldermen need to approve. So we felt that this is a new check and balance here in the Charter. I think it belies some of the claims that we heard in the public hearings that, we are increasing the mayor's power. If anything here, we are decreasing it and putting a new check on him that you, the alderman, will have to approve his nominees. Questions on that one?
John, this is especially true when you have a 4-4 composition of the Board of Aldermen. It then becomes a little more of a check and balance. Thank you.
That is correct. All right, number 6. So we said that parties can only nominate the number of people who can actually win for a board or commission. So this was saying that we want to get away from the practice of parties having to run against themselves in an election. We basically said, look, if you are able to win a certain number of seats, you should run enough people for those seats. And obviously, anybody can primary or petition to primary if they want to be one of those 6, in the case of the Board of Ed, or one of those 5 in the case of planning and zoning. But we wanted to get away from the practice of people from the same party having to run, in effect, against each other in a general election. That's what primaries are for, not the general election. Questions on that one? All right. If none, I'll go on to the next one. You guys can still hear me okay, right?
Yes.
All right, good. Always want to make sure on these Zooms that I'm not talking to myself. Good. So number 7. So credit to number 7 goes to Alderman Angleis, right? He actually came to us with this idea, and we actually thought it was a very good one, which is creating a new appointed committee, a citywide technology committee. And the thought here is that as technology continues to evolve over the course of the next 10 years, we want a body with some expertise actually thinking about two duties of this new committee. One is to come up with a long-term strategic plan for the city, inclusive of the Board of Ed, in terms of what our technology roadmap should be. And then secondarily, if the aldermen or through a referendum, the voters authorize money to be spent on technology, the Board of Aldermen may, you don't have to, but you may basically treat this committee like a building committee to actually spend that money and implement it. So basically two functions of this new committee. The composition of the committee is such that it is following the mayor appoints, but the Board of Aldermen approves. However, 3 of the 9 members will be suggested by the Board of Education. So this is truly meant to be a citywide board where the Board of Education and the city are working together to figure out, okay, what is our technology roadmap? And not being a technologist, I can't speak to any of the content that this committee may address, but the point is get people who do know what they're talking about to be on this committee so they can help guide the city.
Dan, this is Eric.
Eric.
First, I want to thank you, your service and the members of the Charter Revision Commission. I know this is a tremendous amount of work and deliberations in this, so I say thank you in advance. I do have a question with the Technology Committee. It is a great idea, and I strongly support it. Would this preclude any people from the city or the Board of Ed experience with technology, like our IT director for the city or for the Board of Ed, or maybe somebody from the police department? Could they be on this committee in any capacity, even if it's ex officio or whatever?
Yes, and so we actually expected, we didn't write this into the charter, but we would expect the head of IT for the city and the head of IT for the Board of Ed to be de facto the staff for this committee. Of course, if the mayor or the alderman wish to appoint, they may appoint whoever they wish. We would recommend that those folks who are employees of the city more serve as staff, and you get experts from the community to be on the committee itself, more so to increase our pool of talent, right? We already have the IT directors working for the city and thinking about this full time. It is of course up to our elected officials, but I would suggest using the membership for IT experts from the community and have those employees be ex officio members.
Okay, good, thank you.
Of course.
Dan, John Angles. As you know, the city, historically, we've had a technology committee that was appointed by the city and the Board of Education, and that committee lasted 12 years. And when we had appointed, we had appropriated via voter approval $2.5 billion at the start of that committee, and that $2.5 billion committee lasted 12 years before the money was exhausted. And once the money was exhausted, the committee was formed as a public building committee, ceased to exist by charter. So that's why the committee ceased to exist. But I remain to this day convinced that this is the right way to go. And what I wanted to say is, rather than talk about it now, I'm listening here and going through all your summary. When you get through with your summary, I want you to give me the opportunity to go through my summary, which I'll address this again. There's a few other things that I want you to consider.
100%, John. Perfect. All right. If there's nothing else on that one, we'll go on to number 8, which was a change that was suggested at one of the public hearings, which is that if there's a vacancy that goes on one of the appointed boards for more than 90 days, that the remaining board members can put a name in nomination. And I think we all know that, you know, it's sometimes difficult to find enough people to serve on all the boards and commissions. So we basically felt like, hey, if the mayor doesn't have somebody after 90 days to nominate, let the board nominate them. There still is a check and balance that is treated just like a mayoral nomination, and it needs to come to the Board of Aldermen for approval. So we basically said, okay, there's another way to fill vacancies now if the mayor fails to fill it within 90 days.
What's the reference to the charter? What section of the charter is that referring to?
Let me see, John. I believe it's going to be it's late in the charter. I believe it's in section 7. Or excuse me, section 8. Forgive me while I look for it. What page? Did somebody have the page number? Page 50?
Yeah, I'm looking at 9.6, unless that's...
Thank you. There it is, 9.6. Yep. Let's see. Is it in 9.6 where we made that change? Yep.
Up vacancy.
Yeah, this is Anthony. 9.6 is just the town clerk.
Yeah, no, that's not right. It's not in 9.6. Forgive me, John. I'm going to have to search for it.
I've got it highlighted here someplace.
Yeah, I was looking at 9.6.2, appointed office.
I would imagine it being read, Ian.
Yeah, I don't think it's in 9.6. It's actually, sorry, guys, it's on page 18. It is in section 5.3. And it's under, it says the language there is, if a vacancy continues for more than 90 days, either the mayor or the remaining members of that board may place a name in nomination. The Board of Aldermen shall vote to accept or reject these nominations within 90 days of the nomination. So that's where the language is. Page 18? 18, section 5.3.
Yes.
I see.
Okay, everybody got that?
No, the comment I wanted to make, and I knew I wanted to make the comment, because I know it says here, if the vacancy continues for more than 90 days, either the mayor or the remaining members of the board may place a name in nomination.
Correct.
The Board of Aldermen vote to accept or reject these nominations within 90 days. And my thought was that the vacancies already existed for 90 days. Don't give us another 90 days to confirm what they appoint, who they appoint. We can do it in 30 days with no difficulty. So I just moved that up to 90 days. Don't give the Board of Aldermen another 90 days to confirm the nomination.
I personally have no problem with that, John.
I think that makes sense.
We wanted to give more flexibility, but I'm also okay, given the urgency of a vacancy, to give less. I'm fine with that.
You can do that. You make the change.
It's within, it says within, John.
Yeah, within, well, look, the reason that I say put the 30 days is because you say within 90 days, and I know I got 90 days, I'm going to sleep. I'm going to take that. The vacancies already existed for 90 days, so the frustration on the boards and commissions is they're operating lower than, with less people than they need. They want these people on there to serve. So I said, give us a boost. Don't give us the 90 days. Okay, Dan, go ahead to the next.
Okay. Yep, got it. So then on the next one, number 9 is basically the administrators in P&Z, Inland Wetlands, Parks and Rec, and the Conservation Department will be appointed directly by the mayor. Currently, they are appointed in different ways, whether it is the commission appointing them or the commission recommending and the mayor appointing. We just said, no, these are employees of the city. People who are, it's different for people who are volunteers, but people who are employees should be run by the executive, and that executive should have the right to hire and fire as he sees fit. He or she sees fit. So basically we said, all right, we're going to standardize that so that all these full-time employees are going to be appointed by the mayor.
Okay.
Wait, Dan,
Yep.
is this specifically referred to in the charter, the red line, page 33, 34?
Yeah, let me have a look, Noreen.
Yep.
Give me 1 second. Sorry, I'm flipping between documents. Page 33, 34.
33.
Yes. So in
Okay.
section 6.11, 6.12, 6.13, that's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it's correlating. Okay, great, thanks.
Yep, of course. Any other questions on that one?
Dan, Anthony, I have a question.
Of course.
I don't see it in the charter, but on all those positions, I don't see any write-up as to whether they have to have certain experience as you have for the new chief of staff that you wrote in.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the chief of staff language we did leave, even though it's a low requirement, right? Because I think they have to have a bachelor's degree. But no, we actually wanted to keep it flexible and allow whether it is the mayor himself or whether the aldermen wish to write that into ordinance. If there's any minimum requirements, we didn't want to put that into the charter. We wanted to keep that as flexible as possible.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Of course.
Dan, I just got one question. It's David Gidwani again.
Of course.
610, 611, 612, 613. How about instead of just the mayor making the decision, that the aldermen have a say in it too?
You know, having that check and balance, like I would want to make that parallel with everything else in this section, right? So that is up for debate. Right now, with all the other existing language, it was simply that the mayor shall appoint, right? So the mayor appoints without like the alderman having to approve. I'm certain, like putting in that check and balance is certainly something that can be discussed. I would just say if you're going to do that, don't do that just for these positions. Make it parallel. I think you tend to see, that there is that check and balance in like the state level and the federal level, where commissioners are voted on by the General Assembly, where cabinet members are voted on by the Senate. I think that is up for debate. Whether we actually didn't consider that idea didn't come before us. So I think that has merit to discuss whether you want a check and a balance on these positions, or whether you would want the mayor to have the authority to do it unilaterally.
Right, but giving the mayor the authority for all these is basically giving the mayor all the powers, and there's no checks and balances because the aldermen are not involved and nobody else is involved. So it was just a suggestion where I'm sure we could talk about it.
Yeah, no, we actually didn't talk about that, so I actually think that is an idea worthy of conversation.
Okay.
Okay, this is John Angley speaking. I listened to the question. Why, I want to ask the Gidwani a question. Why would you want to insert the alderman into an administrative appointment? The aldermen have no business being involved in the appointment of administrative positions. This is not a check and balance situation. We are the legislative and fiscal authority, not the administrative authority. This is like the separation of church and state. You're suggesting to insert the aldermen someplace where they have no business being. That's not check and balances. What we're looking to do here, if we're going to let the administration run the administrative part of this government, we gotta keep our noses out of the administrative part of the government and let them do their job. That starts with the appointment of people. We don't tell them who to appoint or how to appoint. We don't write their job descriptions for them. We don't tell them how they gotta do their job. We just provide them with the legislative authority. We will legislate if they need a job description approved, or the fiscal authority will provide the money if they need funding for that position.
Well, just in the interest of continuing the discussion, sorry, this is Noreen. John, understood, but just for discussion purposes, how does that differ from the other parts of the charter that the mayor will, I guess, recommend and then we approve?
I don't know.
This is Jerry the flip out there. Those were for commission.
Yeah.
For commission. This came out of a discussion we had with Ginny Harger, regarding the planning and zoning administrator. They basically, they were saying they don't have didn't believe, she said that she didn't believe they had the authority to do this. They don't have an HR department through a commission, and the executive, shouldn't be doing that kind of work.
Yeah, I think that, and just to insert myself here, so we actually didn't debate this, right? Like, so as Gary said, we simply moved, we said, well, it shouldn't be the boards and commissions appointing. It should be the executive, right? So we didn't debate the idea that David brought up. And I think that, like, and this is just to the alderman, like, there are two sides to this issue, right? I think John quite articulately said, hey, these are administrative functions. They should be the choice of the executive. There is a counter argument to that, right? Which is to say that, look, for many high-level appointed officials, it's not done for every appointed official, but in state or federal government, there is that check and balance, right? So I actually think we didn't debate this, right? So this is the first time I'm talking about it. The idea never came up before us. But I think that if the alderman wished to debate that, there is a debate to be had there. What we as a commission did not have it.
And Dan, the present charter says, I guess planning and zoning recommends, or I forget how the wording is, with the approval of the mayor.
Correct. And what we did, all we did was make everything parallel with how other positions are done, right? We didn't debate the check and balance point.
Yeah, it's Anthony, I have a question.
Yes, Anthony.
When you started your discussion, was this standardized in other cities the same way?
In most cities that we saw, it was the executive appoints and without legislative approval. But as I said, that's not universally true, right? There are some towns where there is that for administrative positions, there is a check and balance. So while most of them are executive just appoints, that's not universally true. Other questions on that?
Yeah, just another comment, just thinking out loud here, but this is John English. In the hiring of an administrative person, you generally have a testing procedure. And they go through a rigorous interviewing process and testing, and that forms the basis for comparisons and the development of a list of the 10 most highest people that you can pick from. So the selection comes from not just any one person, but a number of people who finish in the top 10. I believe that's, if I remember correctly. And so, we're not privy to any of that. We're not privy to it. You know what I mean? Inserting the legislative authority into that decision-making process is just just doesn't fit. Thank you. Okay, Dan, next.
Okay. So pressing on, 10th change was change requested by the fire chief that fire commissioners must be electors of the city of Shelton. It's parallel with all of our other boards and commissions, and basically the thought being that whereas we do have some volunteers from other towns, I think about 15% of our fire departments from other towns, that the leadership should be Shelton-based. And we agreed with that. We said, yeah, it's that way for every other board. That makes sense for the Board of Fire Commissioners as well. That, by the way, impacts no current fire commissioner. So, questions on that? All right. If not, then move on to the next page is budget and finances. So here, again, the principles that we are holding in our heads. There are two of them that may seem to be in conflict right away, but you'll see that I think we found some elegant solutions to them. One is we want to maintain check and balances in budgetary process, which I'm including under the budget procurement. I'm including bonding, right? So kind of all things financial. But at the same time, we want to give operational flexibility. So what does that mean? Well, that means within a system of checks and balances, we want to allow more flexibility in how we do things so that the check and balance are still there, but the charter isn't restricting beyond that check and balance. And that'll come alive as I go through these different areas. So the first change is right now the Board of Aldermen can authorize bonding up to 2% of the budget. We're increasing that to 3%. And the logic there was we want the Board of Aldermen to be able to bond for what I would call the run-of-the-mill things we need to do to run a city, right? That you shouldn't have to go to the voters constantly to pave roads. Right? That's something that I think everyone would agree if one of the functions of local government is to pave the roads. So you guys should be authorized to authorize that. However, larger things that are out of the ordinary, like building a new school, building a new fire department, things like that, we still want the check and balance of referendum there to actually have the voters approve that. So questions on that one?
John English speaking. I think that's a good recommendation to go from 2% to 3% of the budget, primarily because on an annual basis, the bonding available, that's 2% available to the Board of Aldermen, 2% the grand list, but not the grand list, the total budget. The total budget each year. That comes to like $127 million thereabouts. And that 2% doesn't just about gets us through the year, and we find that there's some things that we're short we can't do. One of the glaring things that prompted this increase is the need to provide Chromebooks for schools. And that started out roughly $230,000 a year Chromebooks, and it's now costing roughly going to be $500,000 because you're going to have your funded Chromebooks in 6th or 5th grade, and then you have to fund them again in the first year of high school because it's 40. And so we need more money for those kinds of things that are rapidly becoming a necessity. Just can't make it with all the fire and public works and parks and vehicles and police vehicles and stuff like this. So it's rapidly becoming achieve what we do. So your 3% versus another $1 billion. That's a big help, isn't it?
Great. Any other questions or comments on that one? All right. If not, thank you, John. Number 12 was saying that you, the Board of Aldermen, may, right, we're going to get into may versus shall, may establish standards for budget submissions that all departments have to adhere to. So this is something I know that you are in real-time talks with the Board of Ed about, but aligning, this is, back from my days in local government, aligning how the Board of Ed presents its budget with how other city departments present its budget. You really, as the budget authority, want the ability to compare things apples to apples. So we're just giving you the power to say, hey, here's the format that we want budget submissions in. You don't have to do it, but you have the power to do it.
I think the current charter presently vests that authority with the finance director. And I think that what you've done is, presently, if the aldermen want the budget submitted in a certain format, we have to go through the finance director to get it done. Not that we've had any difficulty doing it, but this gives the aldermen authority to get it done, to get the budget presented in the format.
That's correct. Okay, anything else on that one? Okay, I've got number 13. So we have increased the threshold for going out to bid and given more flexibility below that threshold, right? So this was a request from the purchasing agent. Our numbers for what needs to go out to bid, a formal bid, have not been changed in some time. And so we basically said, hey, above $25,000, which, by the way, is what state statute says you must do, you got to go out to formal bid. Anything below that, you, the Board of Aldermen, may set different levels for different things. So this is, again, where we wanted to be flexible. So right now, our charter has a level at which you have to go get 3 quotes. We would recommend keeping that, but we want to leave that up to you, the Board of Aldermen, to set that policy. And one of the things and now we get into must, that the Board of Aldermen must do is you must establish the standards by which a bid is selected. So right now, the charter says you have to go with the lowest responsible bidder, which we believed gives it's too restrictive, because it just assumes that the lowest bidder, especially in complex things, that whatever's cheapest is the best. But we all know that someone could come in and be the cheapest and then have a ton of change orders, and it turns out they're not the cheapest. So we basically wanted to give you, the Board of Aldermen, the flexibility to say, okay, here's what those standards are, and here's how we want to write them. And you can adopt the exact same one that was in the charter if you think that's best. But this is a must, right? We can't, in doing this, we said, are we leaving this too loosey-goosey, right? Because are we doing away with standards for how we pick the winner of a bid? And so we got around that by saying, no, Alderman, this is now your accountability. You will be held accountable by the voters to come up with a smart way to choose the winner of a bidder. And it might be the way that it used to be in charter. It might be something different. Questions on that one? Okay, so if there's anyone in here that, obviously we've given you a new responsibility that you're going to need to think through. So this is just one I'm highlighting as, the Board of Aldermen, after this thing is passed, kind of in the, November, December timeframe this year, is going to need to take this up. All right, number 14. This one's an easy one, is if we do eliminate the Board of A&T, you basically eliminate a month from the budget cycle, right? Because right now you have a month where the Board of A&T is allowed to hold hearings and pass their version of the budget. Obviously, if there's no A&T, you can shrink that budget season by a month. Basically, the advantage of that is you get more information, right? Whether it's from the state on what we're getting from the state, whether it's on tax revenues. So you just get a month more of data and information. At the same time, we gave the mayor the power to allow boards to delay their submission. if that makes sense. I think we ran into that this year with the Board of Education budget is it just, I forgot the reason, but it wasn't ready in time. We just want to explicitly give the mayor that power for the Board of Ed or any other department, right? Because it basically eats into his time to prepare a budget. So if he wants to give them more time, he has that power. Questions on that? All right, we'll get into the last couple here, and then and please forgive me, everyone. I have a work call at 1 o'clock, so I'm going to have to drop off and let Vice Chair DiFilippo take over. But I think we can get through most of the rest of these items in the next couple of minutes because we're starting to get into minor ones. All right, so number 15 is making explicit something that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Dan,
Okay. Hold on.
Okay.
On number 14, John Angley speaking, I just want to confirm these dates. The department submits their budget to the finance department director / the mayor no later than March 15th. The budget process, the time. Then the mayor submits the budget to the Board of Aldermen later than May 1st. Then the Board of Aldermen holds a public hearing no later than May 15th, and the Board of Aldermen adopts the budget no later than May 31st.
That is all correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the budgetary items?
Dan,
all
David
right,
Gidwani again.
Hey, David.
I know you got to go, you said, so I'm just going to come right out really quick. Is there any way we could change the time of the public hearing, which is supposed to be July 23rd at 11:45 in the morning, because a lot of parents have reached out to me and said they want to get involved in this, and 11:45 is not convenient. Why not switch it to the evening?
I'll let Alderman Anglace address that.
Okay. You can carry on then. I'll talk to John later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's technically your guys' public hearing, so.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Okay, so number 15 is Board of Aldermen can now create rules for non-present voting. So something that's informally happening, right? So one of the impacts of technology is people are able to do meetings virtually. We honestly did the vast majority of our work virtually over Zoom. And, we were all a little skeptical of it first, but it actually worked really, really well. So we wanted to give you guys the power to set rules for the boards and commissions, subject to state statutes that may exist on, what votes may be taken virtually, what's the rules for participation, things like that. And again, this is a may, not a shall, right? So you now have that power. Questions on that one? Okay, if not, number 16 is basically saying right now the Board of Aldermen has a very strict majority. And by what that I mean is to pass anything, you need 5 votes. So if there are 5 members present, you still need 5 votes to pass something. That is a much higher standard than Robert's Rules, where Robert's Rules says it's a majority of those present and voting, assuming you have a quorum, which for the Board of Aldermen is 5. So we basically said, hey, for the most important stuff, ordinances and the budget, we wanted to keep it at that absolute 5. You need 5 positive votes to pass something. For something lesser, like, hey, we're approving somebody or approving a mayor's nomination to the Parks and Rec Commission, now we say it's Robert's Rules. It's majority of those present and voting. So if there are 6 aldermen present, then 4 is a majority, right? So that's a lowering of the standard for what constitutes a majority for anything that's not the budget or an ordinance.
John Angley speaking. I'd like to ask Corporation Counsel, who's on the line, to comment on this, because this originally, as I recall, this came about as a memo from Tom Welch, I believe, former Corporation Counsel. I just want to know, has counsel looked at this, has reviewed this, and got a comment on it.
I heard John's comment, but I'm not sure what he's asking me to comment on.
The necessity to pass motions by 5 affirmative votes was long ago, even when you had fewer members present than eight members, was held to a standard by former corporation counsel as a must. You must have 5. So if you only have 5 members present at a Board of Aldermen meeting, you've got to have all 5 votes to pass something. And I think what I just heard Dan say is that Charter Revision is recommending that in cases where you have fewer members, you don't need 5 votes to pass something. You can pass it 4 votes as long as it's a majority and meets Robert's rules, the criteria is Robert's rules. So I'm saying that, recalling back, and I don't recall vividly, but it was in writing, the council informed us need 5 votes in order to pass it. That's why.
John, I'll look for that memo, but what you're saying is a little different than some things that the board has done in the past, specifically with regard to bonding. I'm aware of that because the Board of Aldermen has authorized bonding in the past based on just the number of majority votes that have occurred from the aldermen when there was not 9 members there. So I'm not sure that you have followed a 5 majority every time. I had to research that before the last bonding. But I'll try to find Tom's memo and report back to the aldermen and the committee.
Dan kind of revision people know. I think it's worth looking at. Spend a few minutes to look at it. Okay.
Great. Okay, and so at this point, folks, I'm going to hand it over to Gary to drive through the rest of it, and then, of course, to hear John's comments as well. Please forgive me for having to drop off the folks who pay my bills. I got a meeting with them. So,
Dan, can you stay on for 30 seconds? This is Fran.
Yes.
I just want to say something to everybody. I know you've all been working hard with regard to this, and you're at the end with regard to consideration of a product coming from the Charter Revision Commission. But understand the package, whatever it is, if it is going to face a deadline coming out of the state of Connecticut with regard to being on our ballot. And I know this year, because it's a presidential election, the timetables are a little different for submission of anything local that's going to be on the ballot with the national. And also because of the COVID overlay, I would suggest that you just understand that you don't have an endless amount of time as we get to the end of August to resolve this, because there's going to be a window, and that window is going to shut. If this isn't ready, it cannot go on the ballot.
That is correct, Brandon. We have been told by the town clerk that the absolute last date that this can be submitted from the Board of Aldermen to the voters is September 3rd. So we basically have to the end of August for the aldermen to wrap this up.
Understood. Okay.
Perfect.
Just want everybody to understand.
Thank you, Frank.
Go ahead, Dan.
No, I just wanted to, before I have to drop off, Mr. President and Alderman, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to serve on this board and for appointing such a fine group of people to it. I have enjoyed the process. Hopefully it has a positive impact for city government. And obviously, if anybody has any other questions for me, just call me. Obviously, I am here all throughout your deliberations to answer any questions that you have. So thanks, guys, and I'll hand it over to Gary.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, our next order of business, which would be number 17, which is a notice or requirements for all city business, is now to be put on our website, plus whatever else is required by state statute. And basically, there's parts in this charter that required us to put that action in a newspaper, which is basically an outdated requirement for public notifications. And I know that there was a bill that was in the General Assembly to do away with that. It did not pass, or did not get taken up. And it may happen within the next 10 years. So we just wanted to make sure that our charter, if the state were to change the state statute, it wouldn't conflict. So basically, if it's needed and the state requires that we publish it in a newspaper, we will. But if not, we don't have to. Any questions? No? Okay. Number 18. Kind of simple, that the alderman shall call another charter a revision no later than April 1st, 2030, which, follows the 10-year deadline for the next charter revision commission. Kind of simple. Number 19, which is that where you make we propose to change the administrative assistant's title to the chief of staff. And the title more accurately describes the role of chief of staff. Go ahead, John.
I have a question, John English. Page 11 of your summary, item 4.5.2. We continue to refer to a position that the Board of Aldermen employs as clerk of the board. And that's got to change, because there is there's an ordinance dated November 8th, 1990, prior to us taking office, that lists the name of the position as Administrative Secretary - Board of Aldermen. So I think we should start using the name that the job description has for the position, instead of referring to it continuously as clerk of the board. We can change chief of staff, we'll change to Administrative Secretary, Board of Aldermen, as required by the job description ordinance.
John, what was that title again?
Administrative Secretary - Board of Aldermen. And the ordinance is dated November 8th, 1990.
Just one comment. Instead of secretary, what about assistant?
This is
I don't know,
Anthony. I concur with Noreen on that. I was going to make that comment. Good call, Noreen.
Sure, yeah.
Assistant. John, what Noreen said is change the title to administrative assistant, but what I understand is there's an ordinance.
You just can't change it to what you want to call it, the position. There is a job description dated November 1990 that sets forth the title for the position. We can change the title over all these years. Willy-nilly. All I'm saying is, that's what the title is, let's use it.
It's a job description, it's not an ordinance?
It's an ordinance. It's an ordinance. You gotta change the ordinance if you wanna change it.
Well, why don't we refer to the ordinance then? And then we can change the ordinance. Like be more open, flexible in the charter, just to refer to the,
Speaking for the commission, I don't think the commission has an issue.
Throughout the charter, you refer to clerk of the board.
Yeah.
Clerk of the board, clerk of the board. All I'm saying is.
I see, you just want to align it with the ordinance. I got it.
That's all I'm saying.
Right.
I don't believe our commission would have an issue.
But we never, I suggest you make that number 21 on the list, so we at least get it in there. Thank you.
The board would have to make that recommendation. And then, the last thing we put in there was number 20. We added a preamble. We gave, our chairman, right to come up, with a preamble, and he did. And, I think it's a nice job, nice touch.
I agree.
Anthony, I agree also. As do I.
Okay, John, that's our report. I know you had, some comments, or you wanted to change the format a little bit?
But, yeah, I have a few things, just to quickly go through, address some of them as we go along. I worked off the, red line version. Flipping through because,
If you want to stop, just let us know what page you're on.
okay, yeah, page 21. Page 21, the Technology Committee, comments of the Technology Committee. I just think it needs some tweaking. The mayor should appoint 3 members. The Board of Aldermen should appoint 3 members. The Board of Education should appoint 3 members.
Okay, and we debated that. And the reason we tried staying consistent in everything we did. So felt that, this committee is really no different than any other committee. So since the mayor would recommend, the Board of Aldermen would appoint, we thought that it was, prudent to, keep it consistent. And that was one of the goals the commission had, is to try to make the charter consistent in all aspects.
Well, I think what's more important than disagreeing over who appoints and how they appoint is the fact that we've got to establish the Technology Committee. I think there's a great deal of writing on it. I think that's super important. So we can always work.
Yeah, we all agree with that, John. So, I mean, you got to think about it. You have the opportunity after the public to make a recommendation. We'll be happy to consider it. I mean, it's not.
My feeling on this, my strong feeling, the reason I belaboring this is that I don't want to see education left out of the opportunity to appoint 3 people. And we can certainly, if the voters approve the charter revision, and we do get the Technology Committee, and we do go forward with that, then we'll find a way to include them so they'll have 3 members of their choice.
We agree with that.
All right,
The commissioners, right? We agree with that concept, so it's just a matter of the language. That seems fine.
At one point, this is Darlene, at one point, we did specify that, and then we thought we were getting too wordy, and so we took it out, because we did do that.
Okay, go on to page 22, section 5.4, general provisions, section C.
What page, John?
Page 22 in the charter, the red line version of the charter. Section 5.4, under general provisions, section C. Members shall hold no more than 1 elected municipal office and 1 appointed municipal office, or two appointed offices within the city. I think that needs a little clarifying. The appointed municipal office shall not be a subcommittee of the elected office. For instance, if you're elected to the Board of Aldermen, if you're on a subcommittee, the subcommittee, finance committee, or public health and safety, that shouldn't count as another.
I don't believe it is. Our
I'm just saying, if
Okay.
it is, it's got to be clarified. You know, just don't want to interfere.
Fran? That? What, Fran? Is Fran there?
You got to call the corporation council.
Corporation Council? Fran? Maybe he could reword that.
We might have lost them.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Page 23, and that's section K, same general provisions, it's RTN, section K. The Board of Aldermen may establish by resolution for all city boards and commissions rules regarding participating in voting in meetings when not physically present in line with Connecticut general statutes. It's confusing to me. Connecticut general statutes offer choices of systems, etc. The technical people are more qualified to determine this issue than the Board of Aldermen. It gets too involved for the aldermen to determine the technology to be used. And that's why setting up these meetings and things, as if we haven't done that, it's been relegated to them.
I mean, 10 years ago, I'm not sure Zoom was, in our dictionary when the charter was done. And basically what we thought was, we don't know where technology is going to be 10 years from now. So we would, punt it to the Board of Aldermen as technology changes to come up with ideas for attendance of meetings.
Okay, so what your thought there, the explanation is that the technology people would come up with a process that conforms with the state statutes and the state guidelines, and the alderman would adopt that.
Right. I mean, during this pandemic, the governor came up with the idea that, we're able to participate, the way we're doing it today. Part in person, part,
John, if I may. Anthony, I question that one too, on Zoom and some question marks, virtual, et cetera. This, I think came up first on the board of P and Z. We had people out of state during part of the year and calling in and participating that way. And it was their commission that kind of approved that itself. But John, on it, it is confusing. It needs more clarification as to when can you do this. I truly don't want people just, living in Florida or living in Alaska, supposedly they're only six months or 1 day, participating in Shell. I want them to be living here most of the year and coming to meetings if possible and participating more. I understand at 11:45, people have work to do. They're working either from home or if they're working at their own office. That's why we have our meeting at 7 o'clock normally. And so I understand moving it to now because of the situation, but I think that has to be clarified.
Anthony, we're saying the Board of Aldermen shall establish it. That's, we're just going with the effect that I'm not sure this commission could write something for the next 10 years and we would know, what technology exists in that time period.
And I can appreciate your thought on that. Thank you.
Well, look it over, that's our place. My next, on page 28, section 6.7.3, hours and duties. I just, had trouble with the last sentence. The grammar just didn't seem to add up.
It didn't come out, we fixed that.
Okay. So we'll do that.
Anthony, could you tell us how you fixed it, or show it, can you read it to us now, how it should be?
We fixed, this is Darlisa, such work, it was definitely wrong, and so we just made it grammatically correct, taking out the repetition.
This is from the old chart.
I think we all recognize that different departments work with the Board of Education doing certain things to help them out, which is absolutely fine.
No, Anthony, I don't, and Darlene, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we changed the intent of 6-7 rate. We cleaned up the language
Right,
to make it correct, right? That was the intent.
right.
I think what we've got to do here, if I may, I think we've got to read this paragraph together
Okay,
and make sure that we all understand what it's saying.
that's fine, Joe.
The Department of Public Works shall supervise and administer all maintenance, construction, and engineering of the public works of the city, except for those areas designated by the Board of Aldermen, as the responsibility of Parks and Recreation Commission, and except for those areas subject to the control of the Board of Education. Now, that's current charter language, and that doesn't change.
Right.
That's, everybody understands that, right? Now, the department shall administer, and this is the department means the Public Works Department, shall administer all maintenance of areas subject to the control of the Board of Education, if the Board of Education.
So requests provided by, that's how it is.
Such work may be charged.
Yes.
Is there a sense missing?
In
The Board of
the,
Education, the red line version does not make sense.
no, but in the clean copy, this is Darlisa, it does, because I picked that up right away. The department shall administer all maintenance of the work of the areas subject to the control of the Board of Education. But we don't have that if the Board of Education, that was taken out. Such work may be charged to the appropriation of the Board of Ed at the discretion of the Board of Aldermen.
Actually,
So, we got rid of,
that's not the way it works. My understanding of how it works, finance people can tell us, but my understanding is that if we do work for the Board of Education, it is charged back as an in-kind contribution. So we get credit for it on the financial records. And I would verify the language here with Paul Heller, the finance director. And, but to just make the change so that it makes sense, that's all I'm saying. All right? We don't have to, I think we understand the general intent of it. As long as we just don't go, if they request it, we do it. You know, when we come to this, page
Yeah,
number.
I got it.
we got it.
Yeah, we got it.
Page number 36. Page number 36. In my red line version of this, page 36 is blank, completely blank.
I see that, and an arrow pointing to 37.
That's not purposely.
Is it intentional, or is it just not clear?
Given to me, I spoke with Sophia, and she said, skip right to the next page, it's going to be that way.
Okay.
It ends on 35.
Yep.
Okay. As you can see, no page.
Nothing's gonna get by you, John.
Page 41, section 7.9, subsequent appropriations, section A. Additional appropriations for any department from any budgeted contingency fund may be made from time to time by the Board of Aldermen upon its own initiative, comma, you gotta insert the word "or" upon recommendation of the mayor. The word "or" was left out,
Okay, where were you, John, again?
okay? And where it says.
7?
Additional appropriation training department of any contingency, when may be made from time to time by the Board of Aldermen upon its own initiative, comma, or, the word "or" is to be inserted before upon, on recommendation of the mayor.
Section 7.7.
Section
Okay.
7.9.
Yeah, it was taken out because of the Board of Enforcement Taxation, so you're right.
That was the one we talked about.
Right.
Yeah, we did.
We did talk
We
about
did
that.
talk about that, or.
We're just having the word "or."
Yeah, right, you're right, John, we talked about it.
Yep.
and-
Okay. Section
7.7.
0.79.
7.7.
Were you, John, now?
Okay, now, I'm on page 42 now, section 7.8, subsection D. Subsection D. It reads, the Board of Aldermen or a designated subcommittee shall consider and approve or disapprove all line item transfers. I understand the designated subcommittee, and what that means, but I would prefer that it says, by the Board of, the Finance Committee, it's to be specific and say the Finance Committee.
So the Board of Aldermen,
Board
commas, Finance Committee?
The Board of Aldermen, Finance Committee, yes, the Board of Aldermen Finance Committee shall consider and approve or disapprove all line item transfers within the department budget. I prefer to put it in there so there's no question that they have the authority.
That's fine. Okay. Yes.
Page 43. Section 7.12, budget making authority. That entire paragraph was removed. And it says, for the purpose of this charter and the laws of the state, the Board of Aldermen shall be deemed to be budget making authority and the legislative authority of the city, and shall have all the powers and duties of such authority. Why was that removed? Does it appear elsewhere?
Just felt redundant. Obvious.
If it was redundant, then it appears someplace else fine, but if it doesn't, I think it bears leaving in to provide notice that the Board of Aldermen is clearly the legislative and budget making authority. It's actually the legislative and
I believe, John, the debate was that it's specified in the Board of Aldermen's section,
Just what I said.
so it's redundant, but leaving it in is not a big deal.
I just bring to your attention.
Okay.
Take another look at it.
Yeah.
I think leaving it in isn't important.
Well, and just for everybody's, clarification, I guess the next order of business, we submitted this to you guys, and then you would make your recommendations after the public hearing on any change, and then submit that whole document back to us for approval.
Oh, okay.
So that this
So that Teresa,
Doing two of them,
correct? Right. So all these little changes, we can get, and rework it, and then that whole document comes back to us with another redlined area.
all right, I'm glad you clarified that.
Okay.
I think, I'm on now page 44. At the top, it says, it's section 7.11, subsection B, bidding. And the rules over there, I would prefer the rules for, how bids are awarded, were in the charter, versus leaving this to the alternate to develop.
That was an interesting debate, and we felt the opposite. We felt things change every, even the purchasing agent came here, felt 10 years, inflation happens. There was even some talk,
Well, okay,
how they even go out and purchase, and, now you have Amazon.
Let me give you the other side of
Okay.
the debate. The public has an interest in overseeing how things are purchased, especially those who are involved in the process. And the first place they look is to the charter to see what it requires and what as a bidder, what's the procedure that's followed. That same bidder now is gonna have to go to the charter and say, the alderman is out there, well, where's the alderman's about to, he's gotta look 30 places to find out. Here it is in one place in the charter, it's there, it's clean, it's easy to see for all users. That's the main concern I have.
The commission, we debated it, kind of felt that things change within 10 years. You're the legislative body, so that gives the body the right to adapt. And that was the reason.
Well, okay, if we want to kick it back to you and re-debate it.
Yeah. Or reword it.
Right.
Okay, page 45, under section C, subsection C, professional services, paragraph 1. Except as provided in section 7.11, subsection C, 2, the Board of Aldermen shall determine by resolution at least annually those services which are considered as professional. The Board of Aldermen shall determine the process and criteria by which those services are selected. I'm not sure I remember, where can I read my note on that? Yeah, I know.
Anthony, we have done this. To decide what's professional service, architect.
We do every year, we list the professional services, we have that.
Okay.
We have a list. At least annually, those services that are considered professional. I don't know what it means when the next sentence that you add, it says the Board of Aldermen shall determine the process and criteria by which these services are selected. I'm not so sure that, we agree with that.
Okay. Well, like I said, John, we
have a difficult enough time just trying to determine the professional services. If you want me to sit here and determine the criteria on which those are determined, everyone changes. Everyone's different.
I know that, and that's why putting it in the charter, there's some debate to maybe less is better.
The Board will determine the process and criteria for which these services are selected. Just simply saying that we select them is good enough. You don't need that second sentence. That's asking things I can't provide you.
Oh,
or not that concludes my observations.
And we're glad of that.
I have some comments, if I could.
So do I when you're
Good,
done.
Anthony.
Page 46, section, 7.12. I believe there should,
Wait till we get there. Sure. 7:12, okay. Ready, cash?
yes, I believe there should be a definite number there. As we put in other things where we say, you know, between this number and that number, there should be a definite number of how much cash you can have on hand, so that there's no question what can be spent in a month, that type of thing, without more authorization.
This is Darlene, I have a question for you, Anthony. Could we put it in perhaps a percent? Because the dollar amount in 10 years, I'm looking long time. How can we do that so it will be sensible 9 years from now, when who knows what prices will be?
Yeah, I don't.
I can agree to a percentage, but I would rather a flat number than a type.
And we left it with the,
Excuse me, I'm point of order here. What are you talking about?
petty.
Section 7.12, petty cash.
So where's
Page
the-
46,
We didn't,
third paragraph.
Where does it say a percentage?
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
we didn't make a change to it, all we did was change the number.
Yeah, I see the numbers change, but I
No,
read
the
it.
number, there was never.
So you want our recommendations after the fact?
We left it in there, I mean, one of the things today, is really probably not a lot of cash that takes place. It's
I would hope not, especially the way things are, but I would rather, if you're gonna say what's petty cash, I don't wanna get 1 month, one number, and another, and then say, well, how did you reconcile this? So we don't have anything happen with the petty cash. Somebody come in or go out? Okay,
Wouldn't this, sorry, this is Noreen, wouldn't this be, Anthony makes a good point, but wouldn't this be handled within the Director of Finance? Perhaps he has internal procedures that says how much petty cash can be, or percentage or whatever?
And it is now.
Yeah, that's what I mean, so,
We just left it alone, I mean,
right.
there's probably a cash procedure that the finance director has, and whatever that is, it probably.
Maybe
I don't know what it is.
see, Anthony, maybe I overthought it, but I'd like to see a number so that we don't get into, you know, how much did you spend this month? And so it's a lot.
Anthony, does it make you feel better? You know, we can ask the Director of Finance if he has a certain policy, which if he doesn't, he should. But, I mean, you raise a good point, but I don't know that it belongs here. I think it's a conversation to have with the Director of Finance and his internal procedures. That's my opinion.
I'll send a little memo today and ask if that's an excellent point. Thank you, Noreen.
Yeah, sure, thank you.
If I may, on page 5, B, you've left it, you've checked it out, elected, okay? The only comment I have is because, having run for office now multiple times, the 2 years is kind of difficult. I think it should be 4. I know other people are having a mind of their own, saying, this way, if there's a problem, get rid of you in 2 years, but I still think for the position that we hold at these times, we sometimes we're overlapping with a lot of information that we have from years gone by to make decisions going forward, and that having a longer term would make it make sense to me.
You know what, Anthony,
Put it right.
we did debate that. We did debate having a 4-year term for the mayor. And we chose to keep it, 2, because, the alderman, being the legislative board, and the mayor, gives the voters the ability, if they don't like what you're doing, to change.
And I can appreciate that. Thank you. That's all my comments at this time. I'll make sure the others are right. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for your commissioned work. Excellent job. I don't know if this is the conclusion or what, but that's my comment.
It's not the conclusion.
No.
Because you're gonna bring some things back.
Right.
I have some comments too.
Okay, go ahead, Rick.
I lost my page here, but,
Stay put together, so it should not.
I have some,
Hey, John, this is David Gidwani again. May I just say something before my battery dies on the phone?
Go ahead.
All right, hold it there.
So is there any way, because a lot of people have reached out to me who would like to attend the public hearing, and instead of holding it at 11:45 in the morning, because a lot of people work in the morning, they prefer holding the meeting in the evening. Would you consider changing the time to, say, 7 p.m. or 6:30 p.m. on July 23rd?
David, you said that you would discuss this with me. I would appreciate if you would do that, and, because I have to discuss it with others. If
Okay.
you recall, we did not, the Board of Aldermen, has not set up this procedure, nor have we set this time frame. It's been done in conjunction with the IT people. And because they understand how it's set up and what has to happen, and also utilizing the auditorium as it's set up to handle various issues in conjunction with the pandemic. I don't know if this can be done, but certainly ask the question. That's about the best I can tell you.
David, Gary again. I don't know if you're aware, but we did have a public hearing. We had one at, I believe it was 11 o'clock live here, and then we also had one at night, by Zoom. So we've tried to make this, as accessible to the public as possible.
Okay, Eric McPherson, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just have a question, page 16 of your red lines, Board of Education. I think there was a state statute regarding, when you are elected to the Board of Education, that you cannot hold any other position. Because we've had members who were on several boards or commissions, and when they got elected to the Board of Ed, they had to resign from those other commissions.
That was in our charter.
Okay.
And then I believe that was 2 charters ago, and then the last charter put in where they could be a member of another committee, because I know one of the members, I believe it was Jim Orzetti, came and spoke to us, where he was a member of the building committee. He was able to do that, because they put it in because it was related. So I'm not sure that's state statute.
Yeah, I thought that it was, and I remember someone saying that it was.
It was in our charter originally. It was in our charter, not state statute.
Because I know that, because it was Board of Ed, they're more governed by state statutes, than anything. Because then I see the same thing here under planning and zoning, that, the members shall not hold any other elected or appointed office. And then my thought is, you have a member of a land use commission, maybe on one board, and then maybe on the planning and zoning board. And I'm just looking that, does this create any kind of conflict?
Well, I don't fully understand your question, Eric.
It says,
I mean, I don't believe that the Board of Education is in state statutes, that's what I'm saying.
well, I think we really need to look at it. I mean, first of all, that board is very time-consuming as it is, and I can understand with the any building committee, because a lot of our Board of Education projects involve the building committee or the public employees, the public,
Yeah, that would be,
public improvement. Right, the improvement building committee. So I understand that part of it though, but I was, unless I'm wrong, but I was always under the understanding that because it's the Board of Education and more state statutes apply, because they're governed more by the state statutes than our ordinances or even the charter for that matter. Why that is.
They are, but not by what
being
can and
removed.
can't do.
Okay. And then again, with the zoning, it's the same thing here, it's been, crossed out, where members shall, not hold any more than one elected or appointed office. So what I'm saying here is, you may have somebody who's on one of the other land use boards, and then is also a member of planning and zoning. Does that not create some kind of conflict?
Yeah, I would believe that would be, I gotta go back and read
So
exactly
that's
what
what
you're
I
saying.
think-
I would
think
believe
that
I don't
should be
believe
kept
you
in
could be
there.
a member of Planning and Zoning Commission and the Inland Wetlands Commission.
Right,
Probably
but I'm saying,
conflict.
I
Obvious
think,
conflict.
just so we don't have, any issues, to, keep that in there.
It's Anthony, if I may agree with Eric, the idea is to get participation from more people than to consolidate it and accidentally, put ourselves in peril that way.
I gotta read the language. Could you help me read the language, what you're talking about, please?
Well, if you look at if I may, Eric.
5.2.
5.2.1, on page 16, the third line down. You crossed out, the member shall not hold other elected or appointed offices within the city. That line, I think, should be left in. Is that what you meant? Yeah.
Right.
Just that line. Because Eric's correct. To be on the Board of Education, you have anywhere from 60 to 90 meetings a year. And I know Ms. Ritter could attest to that. How you could be on another committee, or that would, to me, not only the timeframe, but you could be conflicted if you're on another committee that has something to do with the building of the school building or something like that.
Right.
That's where you're going at?
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was brought in, that was one of the changes that was made 10 years ago to allow it. And we agreed with that.
We have to get it to them in writing, so.
My feeling regarding that, Bernie Simon, my feeling regarding that is I think they should be allowed to have other people, if you're on the board of, Ed, having been on the board of Ed myself for 2 terms, and on the Public Improvement Building Committee, or Public Building Improvement Committee, et cetera, sometimes they do lend one to the other, and you have expertise coming from that other side. Also having been on numerous different boards myself, it's not that easy in a lot of cases. It's not like we're precluding anybody from joining another board. It's not like you have people lined up asking you to get on in a lot of cases. A lot of cases you're begging people to get on these boards. And when you have somebody that's qualified, and then to say, you're qualified, but we're not gonna allow you to participate on that board because we have a thing here, unless that qualification was in fact a conflict of interest, which should become evident that it's a conflict of interest to preclude somebody. I respectfully disagree with the other comments.
Well, let me just put another thought out there then, because if this is taken out, what happens, does there become an opportunity? Let's say a member of the Board of Aldermen gets appointed, I'm not sure, if a member of the Board of Aldermen gets appointed to a vacancy on the Board of Education. There's a conflict. What's to say that whether it's either party, a Board of Ed member resigns, moves or whatever, there's a vacancy, then a person is appointed to fill that vacancy, and then you have perhaps an alderman, whoever, I'm talking in the future or whatever, that says, well, hey, I want to be on the Board of Ed too. So I feel kind of strongly where, I'll give exception to if you're on a building committee, because we have a lot of building projects that involve Board of Education. So I understand that part of it. But I think everything else, I think we have to be very careful with, and especially when you have a Planning and Zoning Commission, where it says in there that members shall not hold no other elected or appointed office. That clause should not be taken out of there.
It's Bernie Simon, Jan. I think maybe the addendum to that is you have a section, I believe after all the different committees have been talked about, where it says there's no remuneration for belonging to a committee, et cetera, et cetera. Perhaps they should have something to the effect of, unless it's an apparent conflict of interest, being on one versus another, and not necessarily saying this committee versus this committee versus this committee. Unless it's a apparent conflict of interest, then no one should be precluded from being on the other one.
Yeah,
Because that's a little more broad brush than trying to pick one out of each one, because you're never gonna, you'll have a book to stick trying to do it that way.
I know we went through this thing, we debated it, and it's kind of unfair. Then we handed this off to Corporation Council.
Right.
We did go through this with a fine tooth comb, making sure it worked with state statutes.
Yeah.
So I believe we're on pretty good
Because I
solid
remember
ground.
too, I think, maybe around 2007, this issue had come up with somebody who had two elected positions. This position had come up.
I'm not sure you could have two elected. You could have one
Well, that
elected,
issue had
and
come
then,
up
and then,
in 2000, I think it was 2007. Because you know, and I'm not just trying to name the person, but the issue was raised, there was somebody that was elected, that held two elected positions.
And one of those elected positions, was a paid position.
Right. Right.
But in this case, are we really discussing that? It sounds like we're talking about boards that you're appointed to, or requested to be appointed to, as opposed to a paid position or an elected position. Neither one of those has ever been discussed, unless I missed that part of the discussion.
This is Anthony, I don't want to kill the discussion, but I think that this is not the place to have this discussion. That we've gone that far, and this commission has done an excellent job.
Oh, I feel the same way.
And, we have the responsibility now of going through it line by line.
Right, okay, yeah.
Doing it, handing off to them our recommendations.
no, you're gonna have to hand off another document.
Yeah, right, we understand. Do that. But you've done an excellent job.
My understanding is that we either accept the document you've given us without change,
Right.
or we submit back to you a document with changes for your recommendation,
Correct.
for your consideration.
That's my understanding, so.
Mine too.
No. And just so that all members understand, if you want to make any change, you better write it up, because it's not going to happen. You gotta write it up, and you gotta get it into me or the clerk.
Because, I mean, you know, in fairness, the time to go over words we did this with John on a bunch of things, was, months ago.
I have a question from the cover sheet. It says the questions to be voted on at the November 3rd, 2020 election. Now, some of these items I can easily go along with, okay? The preamble as an example, okay? Maybe other items I'm not talking about all of it as a voter. So is it all or nothing, or is this gonna be put on 20 items on the ballot, or 15 items on the ballot, whatever you massage it down to, or is it gonna be all or nothing to vote?
All or nothing.
Yeah, that was all.
All or nothing.
Okay, just wanted to know, thank you.
Now, let's just review some timing here. What I'm looking at is today's meeting, July 15th, is the joint meeting where we just finished and concluded all our discussions, and now we've got to determine. I think the next step for us as the aldermen is to hold a public hearing on the charter as presented to us. The document that you presented to us has to be put on the city website, and given, so and we're looking at a date of July 23rd, and currently we're looking at 11:45 a.m. consistent with what we've done. We'll take into consideration we'll discuss what Alderman Giovanni said, can we do it at night for the public hearing? But that's something I'll have to discuss with our IT people. But that's tentative. And then tentatively, we're looking at July 30th for another Board of Alderman meeting to either adopt or reject the Charter Revision Commission's amendments, or pass a resolution, send it back to Charter Revision for further revisions. So, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense to me.
May I ask you a quick question, Bernie Simons? The discussion about changing the time of the 23rd meeting, you'd mentioned you had several meetings that were done. Were they also done in the evening, your public meetings? All the meetings, what time were those meetings done?
7 o'clock.
What was the attendance at those meetings? Overwhelming attendance, or did anyone show up?
No, most of our meetings were workshop, so
Okay.
that it wasn't attended, people could have viewed, go on and look at the views, they're limited. You go back and look at it. But we did have, our first public hearing was live here, that was pre-pandemic. And the second one, I think we had 5 or 6 people.
5.
5 people.
That was at the pre-pandemic hearing?
Post.
Post.
The last public hearing that we had, we were live, maybe 2 people showed up,
Mm-hmm.
and,
5 at the previous one?
5 at night.
And how about the original?
Maybe a dozen, yeah, no.
But everyone did not
There were other
speak.
written recommendations.
Maybe just.
And then there was written recommendations also. Yeah,
Okay.
right.
I just wanted to see if we were missing an overwhelming amount of people.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that we weren't precluding, throngs of people that were begging to come in to this meeting.
And we'll be here to help answer any questions also.
Thank you.
This is Noreen. I have one question for the committee, please.
Sure.
If you could, guys could go to page 33.
Okay?
Okay, so, regarding the first paragraph, 6.9.6.1, it seems the old language is still in there where it says, of which no more than 3 shall be from the same political party. And I don't think that's consistent with what you've done throughout the rest of the document. So shouldn't this be the way you've written the other committees?
You're right. I think we missed that. It should refer to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which I believe 5 would be 3, but we should refer to the table to be consistent.
Yep, okay. I will put that in my comments, written comments for us to read.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
Will you be able to make that change on the document that you mentioned without creating an issue?
yeah, well, we can make a lot of changes.
Okay.
Well, I thought that, yeah, isn't it the process that we're making the changes at this point in time? Like you're,
That's something we would agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah,
Oh, I
I think Norman, we've got to make these, get them in writing, as Sean asked, so that we can present them to you. Exactly.
Right.
Noreen's correct.
Yes.
okay.
Teresa, did you come up here so we can talk to you? I'm asking the, what currently called, city, Board of Alderman clerk, to come up to the front so she can participate. Now, because we're gonna have to funnel all our comments through her. And given the time frames, I'm trying to work out the details so everybody knows they've got to get their comments to you by such and such a date.
All right, so you don't want to have, so you want to have a public hearing on their revisions next Thursday, and we're going to decide whether it's going to be at night and afternoon, and then you want to adopt it a week later. Somewhere in there, don't you need to meet the Board of Aldermen to discuss what you want to do? I mean, I'm getting comments from all different people, I'm not going to know what revisions to make.
What I think we're suggesting is this, that we're going to go forward to hold a public hearing with the document that was presented to us by the Charter Revision Commission.
Right.
We'll hold a public hearing. The aldermen who have comments that we heard today are going to get them to you in writing if they want them to be considered by the Charter Revision Commission.
Okay, so,
And then following the public hearing, we would then get those comments to the Charter Revision.
But that's not what they're saying. They want the document completely revised and given to them back, redlined, with our changes. Am I correct in you saying that? Yes. And since Bernie wants something and Eric wants something different, and you guys can all send your comments in to me, but I may have 5 different ways, 5 aldermen saying 5 different things. So.
Yeah, I think what she's saying is we need to vote on our changes. We all can have changes, but we need to get together and vote before she can proceed and do the red line, or the second red line.
I mean, you don't agree, John? You're shaking your hand.
It's a massive undertaking.
Oh, it is. And I didn't know I was doing it. And I didn't realize I was doing it, so I'm like, great.
The timing is not, you don't know.
I mean, if our committee, agrees, I mean, maybe John, Dan and yourself, maybe a couple, maybe one other person from the committee, could all meet, try to work out the changes that everybody's trying to talk about, help you craft that document. Before the public hearing? After the public hearing. After the public hearing one time, we would help craft that document. You guys could vote on it as you see fit, because most of the changes that we're talking here are just, kind of simple, grammatical type, type things.
Right.
Well, I put down, Teresa put down, what we can expect, what we have to do, and the timing that we have to do it. And there isn't a lot of time to make a lot of changes to this charter and revise the document.
Once the changes are given back to you, what's the process after that? Does it go back to public hearing, or no? No? Okay.
So we got July 23rd is when we're going to hold the
Public hearing. If there's any changes to this, we would work with you to make those changes.
Okay.
And then a document would come back to our committee.
Why can't we just, why do we, I don't understand why we have to completely revise the document to give the changes back to you. Why don't we just itemize each of our suggested changes and get them back to you in reference to the appropriate section?
And then we're gonna vote on it, and then you guys gonna approve it again?
Then you will know what we, that's my point. My point is, the alderman.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
The alderman, I'm asking the alderman, if they have individual changes, get them back to Teresa, our clerk, all right? Then after following the public hearing on the 23rd, if there are any other changes that are heard and the alderman want to suggest them, then they incorporate them in their written comments back to the clerk. This has to be done by July, the public hearing is July 23rd, so and that's a Thursday, so you're not going to be in on Friday, so they gotta be into you by at least Monday, the following Monday, right?
Yeah,
So
so,
that you can go to work on them, and then you can type them up and get them to the charter revision.
Monday
All right.
the 3rd of August you're talking about?
Yeah, and then I guess we would have to have another workshop.
Right, we would have a workshop.
We'd have a
So you're
workshop, try
talking
to
about
incorporate
August
that
3rd.
into what we're talking about.
all right, so I'm not doing a fully revised document?
No.
We would
Okay.
help.
Okay, so what you want me to do is take everyone's suggestions, say Alderman McPherson, boom, 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 and let them decide. Okay, that makes
We would
sense.
have a workshop, John, try to incorporate that, and then one last time, this is after the public hearing, present our,
Then you present your final document to us.
Right.
to us, you would approve it.
The aldermen then are assured that what they suggested was considered by charter revision. You give us back your final document, and we have to decide, have a meeting and say, we adopt it as it is and send it to public hearing,
No, not the public hearing now. You would adopt it, and then we send it to town clerk for,
Town clerk, where it goes to, where it goes for, referendum. Not public hearing, right?
yeah,
And, but we reject it.
right,
And if we reject it, everything is dead.
correct.
It's Anthony speaking, would it be helpful that if I made a comment and I put down the page and obviously the section number, et cetera, put in what I think the wordage should be, and then an explanation of why, would that help you?
Sure, that would be
Okay,
sure.
just so, I don't wanna confuse you, but I wanna give you my thoughts on, as Bernie disagreed with me, and and I understand his disagreement. But, so we get you the information, and that's going, what were they thinking? Okay.
Anthony,
Everybody who has it, every alderman who has a suggestion, a thought, idea to suggest, put it in writing, get it to our clerk, no later than Monday, August the 3rd, is it?
Right, email me and make sure it's, section 5.2,
Yeah.
write your change, what it is, and reference things like that. And that way, yeah.
Use the revised charter, red line version of the charter.
Absolutely, yes.
Right, now, and just to let everyone know that our commission, we passed this unanimously, but we all didn't agree on a lot of items. We discussed them, and then voted on them, and then voted on an entire package together to present to you. So, just like you guys have a difference of opinion, so did we. And we worked out the language the best we could, so we would agree that, this document was the best document we felt that, for the best job we could do for the city.
Well, Bernie Simon, I agree with what you just, the whole thing. The only reason I even made that comment with regard to conflict was I'd like to make the assumption that whomever's in charge of a committee or appointing someone to a committee would have the common sense not to put somebody in conflict, that we wouldn't have to spell that out. And members of that committee should also have the common sense and the fortitude to say, wait a minute, this is not the right guy on this committee because, and nothing against the guy, but the position. So, I'll put down what I said on the thing, but you see, I'm agreeing with you. I don't really think that had to be stated. I just think that the people who belong on these, we should have enough respect for each other not to.
Right, and you know what, and those are
Not to do that.
those are
That's
the
the
discussions, Bernie, for the Board of Aldermen. That's why, the mayor makes the appointment, you guys get to discuss the merits of it.
Exactly, and that's the reason I didn't think that really had to be enumerated, but then as the discussion went on, I figured, let me just bring it up.
Our agenda does not include an item to adjourn.
Wait, 1 second. Teresa, this is for you.
Lorraine wants to say something.
Yes, please. Teresa, this is for you. May I suggest, since I know at least one alderman is not on this call, and I believe Dave's phone was dying, so he may not be on the call, that you send an email requesting feedback, just as we just clarified, because neither of them may know, or just remind us all.
No problem. I will do that before I leave.
Thanks.
No problem.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Call for the adjournment.
Yeah.
There's been no further business to come before the, meeting. Motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second.
Motion made by.
Sign. Bernie, sign.
Alderman Simon, second by
Eric, sure.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Hi,
Thank you, everybody, for coming, appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you, Noreen and David.
Thank you. Thank you. A lot of work.
I agree with you, it's only gotta get.